Hello, I'm Bridget Goodwin from Australia. Thank you so much for the invitation to speak at this wonderful conference. I'm going to speak to you today about the use of honeybee venom for various forms of cancer. I'm a student of Dr Rosenberg's in the phytotherapy department of Bioquantum Academy, and I'm completing my postdoctoral diploma level 3 in integrative medicine. Chemotherapy, you may or may not know, actually began with mustard gas, which was a weapon of war first introduced in the First World War. I actually did my original PhD on this subject, on secret chemical warfare trials on Australian soldiers during the Second World War. And when I published this book, all of the documents in relation to these experiments were secret, and they are still secret today. This is a photograph of soldiers in the First World War who were exposed to mustard gas at Ypres in 1915. And scientists studied in the autopsies of 75 gas soldiers and found that their white blood cell count had dropped as a result of their exposure. So this provoked some interest in how mustard gas may affect blood cells in humans. Between the wars, there was a prominent head of the Chemical Warfare Service called Cornelius Dusty Rhodes. He was the instigator of chemotherapy because he'd been working as a prominent leader in the American Chemical Warfare Service and was aware of the Australian experiments and was also aware of other exposures of mustard gas during the war, which was creating interest in potentially using mustard gas as a medicine to treat cancer. So Dusty Rhodes was the instigator of the Sloan Kettering Memorial Hospital because he recruited some prominent industrialists, and soon after the Second World War they introduced mustard gas as a mysterious new scientific drug for cancer called chemotherapy. This is a photograph of a man known only as J.D. He was a Polish man born in 1894 and was a worker in a ball bearing factory who took part in secret experiments at Yale University. J.D. had cancer and he was exposed to mustard gas to see what it would do to his tumours, and J.D. is acknowledged in this article as being the original chemotherapy patient secretly at Yale University in 1942. So this is a timeline of the introduction of mustard gas right at the beginning of the 20th century, right through until the present day. So you can see that experiments occurred between the wars, and then immediately after the Second World War, chemotherapy was introduced as a treatment for cancer and is still in use in various forms. So this is Dr. Howard Skipper, who actually was active in Australia during the war in the secret experiments. And when he returned to his home state of Alabama, he took with him information he'd gathered in Australia, and he was supported by Dusty Rhodes and industrialists who set up Sloan Kettering Memorial Hospital to actually undertake research with mice in a lab. And Howard Skipper was actually given his own lab in Birmingham, Alabama, called the Southern Research Institute, when he returned after his work in Australia. Skipper told an author of a book about childhood leukemia that he learnt in Australia that the human body can tolerate high doses of certain toxic drugs if the period of exposure is very brief. But if the same dose is given over a long period of time, or even a much lower dose given over a long time, it can be fatal. So Skipper got this information as a result of the Australian experiments and took this knowledge back to undertake further intensive research on how to deliver mustard gas as chemotherapy. This is a photograph of an early chemotherapy lab. set up at Sloan Kettering Memorial Institute, they're actually delivering mustard gas to early chemotherapy patients. On the left, you can see Charles Kettering and industrialists with dusty roads and other people who were investing in setting up Sloan Kettering Memorial Hospital, which became the cornerstone of chemotherapy and cancer research in the United States. And this is Howard Skipper in his Southern Research Institute lab that was developed after the war. Now, in the United States, there was also research on mustard gas on American soldiers, but those soldiers were compensated and a full report was delivered in the late 90s. This never occurred in Australia, and in Australia this research is still quite secret. The key thing about Howard Skipper was he became the architect of what they call the cell-kill approach. So Skipper did a lot of work on rabbits and mice and experimented with various combinations of delivering chemical exposure to determine how chemotherapy could be delivered. And after his death, he was actually acknowledged as the architect of what they call the cell-kill approach to chemotherapy. That is, delivering so much of the medicine to kill the cancer before you actually kill the patient. Although many have argued this very toxic approach has been with many critics. So the notion of drug resistance has plagued chemotherapy because in the delivery of chemotherapy, it has been found that patients quite often appear to become resistant to the drug. So first of all, the tumour is obliterated by the chemical, and then it comes back. And they find that with repeated treatments of chemotherapy, this keeps occurring and is referred to as the notion of drug resistance. But a totally different approach that I'm going to propose to you is using a natural substance called bee venom, which shows quite a different method of action to the cell kill approach, because what actually happens with bee venom is it has a deleterious effect on the cancer cells, but it doesn't hurt the normal cells of the person. This is a diagram of the mechanism of action of bee venom, which shows that the bee venom actually encourages apoptosis or programmed cell death of the tumour without actually damaging the normal cells of the patient. So in a sense, bee venom is the opposite of Skipper's cell kill approach. So it has been acknowledged that even though chemotherapy was exciting and new after the Second World War, there have been many decades now where chemotherapy has had questionable results. It's become well known that it's very toxic. It's common for drug resistance to occur, and many critics have actually suggested that a new approach is needed. The opposite of the cell kill approach is proposed in using a substance like bee venom, so that even though we may have a childhood terror of bee stings, the notion of how bee venom works is actually quite gentle in comparison to these chemotherapeutic drugs that are currently in use. So in liver cancer, for example, in 2008, researchers reported that melatonin from bee venom had potential anti-cancer activity against liver cancer. And they showed that melatonin inhibited tumour cell metastases and reduced cell motility and migration. And this was another different method of action that was encouraging for scientists. In Australia in 2020, a young PhD researcher, Chiara Duffy, made world news when her paper was published in the prestigious journal Nature on how bee venom dissolved breast cancer tumours in rats. The Australian researchers acknowledged that apitherapy was an emerging field that could potentially impact the economic aspects of cancer research globally, particularly in under-resourced communities. And this presented some very encouraging signs for the use of honeybee venom for cancer. Since then, there have been numerous studies exploring the use of bee venom, either with chemotherapy drugs or alone. A 2022 review analysed the effect of bee venom and its components on breast cancer cells and reviewed the mechanism underlying the action of bee venom. In 2020, researchers into alternative treatments for leukemia reported great success using bee venom. Researchers at the Medical University of Lodz in Poland demonstrated that for the first time, melatonin was able to induce apoptosis to encourage programmed cell death. And the researchers noted this was a very important step in leukemia research. So they were very encouraged by using bee venom for other types of cancer, including ovarian cancer cell lines. Following Duffy, recent published Chinese studies have documented the extent to which bee venom is used in the treatment of cancer patients. In 2021, Chinese researchers reported how bee venom is known to strongly stimulate the immune system and is used as a complementary therapy to cancer patients in pain from tumours. And they also noted that the allergenic protease inhibitors and peptides were very active against cancer. And a lot of work is done in Chinese hospitals using bee venom in the treatment of cancer. And I'm just going to show you a video of some bee venom as it's practiced in a Chinese apitherapy hospital. So there's been a lot of research on bee venom as a very helpful medicine. In 2019, Park et al. Reported on all of these different applications for bee venom, including acne, alopecia, dermatitis, melanoma, psoriasis, photoaging, skin wrinkles, and vitiligo. I was very fortunate to be invited to the 4th annual apitherapy conference in China this year, and this was an opportunity to hear many presentations from researchers around the world, including China, on how various forms of cancer were being treated, and this was very encouraging indeed. We were also taken to visit some very impressive apitherapy hospitals in China. This is one at Fairy Mountain in Wulong, which is a beautiful, very beautifully presented apitherapy hospital. I believe there are 30 dedicated apitherapy hospitals in China, and the group that I was with were fortunate to visit a couple of these. As bee venom becomes better known as a potential medicine, it's become possible to buy commercially available bee venom in Turkey, in Croatia, in Romania. Beekeepers, people that are aware of apitherapy, are actively developing products that they are shipping around the world with lab certificates as medical grade bee venom becomes popularly sought after. And in Australia, I'm working with people in industry and science to try and encourage the establishment of a similar industry in Australia. Thank you very much for my presentation today.